taught,
덥죠.
right?
예? 예? 법당은
The teaching
시원하지.
hall is cool.
원래 그
Well, actually, the teaching is
법은 원래
cool.
시원해.
Why is it so? Is
왜냐하면
because
그 법이라는 게
teaching calms
번뇌를
down
가라앉히는
your
거니까.
agony.
그 법이라는 것은 번뇌 가라앉히는 방법 그런 뜻이니까 이제 그 우선 그래서
That's why we call
청량
pleasant.
청량산 그렇게 하고 청량사 그렇게 하는 것도 전부 다 번뇌를 가라앉히기
We also call
때문에
it refreshing
청량이라고
because it
얘기하는
also
것입니다.
calms down our agony.
왜 손오공 그게 보면 화염산
When you see
전축을 가면
the story of 손오공,
화염산이라는 것이 이제 물론 그쪽에 가다가 보면 이렇게
they pass through the desert,
사막을 지나게 되고 또 이제 보니까 이 지질
and
자체가 막
there are also
불타오르는
some
문양
area
같은
where
돼
the
있는
land
데도
itself looks
있지만
like it's burning.
화연산, 명사산 뭐 그렇게
And
이제
so the burning
화염산
mountain
같은 경우는
is
이제
actually a metaphor.
비유를 한 건데
The heat
뜨끈뜨끈한 그
waves
사막의
from the
열기가
desert
마치
is just like since
번뇌가
the agony,
가득해서
since it's full of
우리
agony,
머리
so
아픈
it's
거와 같다.
similar
그래서
to
이제
headache.
화염을
So
불꽃을
you
비유할 때
you
거기서
give
두
two
가지로
examples to the
하나는
flame. The first one is the flame of the
빛의
agony,
불꽃을 얘기하고
and the
그 다음에
second one
이제 지혜의
the
불꽃은 이제
flame of wisdom.
말끔을
It
얘기하는 것입니다. 그래서
it portrays
부처님
the wisdom.
깡배이 이렇게 돼 있는
So
것은 이제
when you see
지혜를
the
상징하고
flame behind the Buddha, it
화염산에
portrays wisdom,
불붙는
and
그 불꽃은
the
번뇌를 얘기합니다.
burning
땀
mountain, it is
위에서
our agony. So
세상을
while
그래서 비구들에게
looking down the mountain from the
마을을 내려다보면서
looking down
저기가
from the
불타고 있는
mountain,
모습이 보이지 않느냐
you
하고
warn
이제
the
비구들을
people that
경고를 하거든요. 되게 강진치로
don't you see the
모욕으로
world
불타고 있는
burning
모습이
because
보이지
of
않느냐.
agony and greed?
종교라는
And also by
또 집단을
creating a group
만들었었고
called a group of religion,
종교를 통해서
through the
집단적
religious group,
이기심으로 집단적
you desire mass interest,
하는 무리들도
and
있고
that
우리가
is
삭개
also a
무리라 그러지.
wrong group.
그런
And
것들도 있고
since
그러니까
you also
세속적
desire
문화를
for
갖다 추구하기 위해서
the common goodness
난리를
and
치면서
also for
자기 또
individual
개인적
greediness,
욕망을 추구하기 위해서 이제
all these
그렇게 하고
things
사는 이런 것들을 전부 다
from the perception of Buddha,
부처님께서 바라보실
it was just
때
like
불에 가득
it was just like a world filled in
불바다와
flames,
같다
caught by
그렇게
flames. So it's just like a sea of
했고 이제
flames.
옛날에
In olden times, like
수양생
서산성,
같은 경우는 도성을
he
갖다가
compared
개미집에다 비유했다가 그냥 그걸 갖다 누가 고발을
compared the
해가지고
word to
임금이 뭐
the
게임
colony of ants,
해가지고
and so he was also put into prison because of his wordings, since the king came to know. But it's almost like when
그런 정도로 무식한 놈들이
when
예수제 지낸다니까 진짜 전화가 왔다니까 예수님 제사를 왜 저래 지내냐고 그래서 그래서 그건 예수제 제사가 아니고 우리의 그또그 불자들도 그래.
well,
이 제자는 제사라는 제자가 아니야.
it goes the same for the Buddhist believers here.
제사라는 것이 아니고 우리가 제가 클 때 제이쪽이죠. 그 제자가 아니고
When you say the offering of the sea and land, and also the offering to Jesus, I also got complained that why are you making an offering to Jesus there? Well, it actually means we are sharing equally to everyone without any biased opinion. So whether it is the God, whether it's a king or even the beggars, we all sit at the same place and eat. So you know the Mucha teaching during the Shilla dynasty. On that day, even the king came out and sat on the ground and also ate the meals. And also we call it 백고자에, and so we bring 100 big or gracious monks around the Korea, and they will come for the teaching. And there was a time when Wonyo or Usang, they also made their teachings. We came all the way here from a discussion of heat,
그래서 이제 바깥에
where
태양이
biologically the
참
sun is
뜨겁고
very hot.
그런데
But
이게
the thing that
사실상 우리가
um,
괴로운 것은 그
torments
뜨거운 것은
us
그래도
is,
그
well,
얼음이라도
that
녹으면
kind of thing we can also put on AC or
에어컨이라도
a fan or eat ice,
식혀올
but
때
the headaches from agony,
번뇌가
it doesn't
나쁘고
get
이제
cooled down
번뇌병 그것은
easily.
그렇게 쉽게 식혀지질 않아.
If you don't
그게
practice, it doesn't cool
정직을
down,
안
but
하면
it
그게
burns
식혀지질 않고 그게
continuously and you can also
파손돼
die from
죽는다는
it.
것을 세상 사람들은 그 번뇌가
And
자꾸
people
나는
in
날
this
수 있는
world,
일들을
they keep
하면서 이
doing things
번뇌가 안
that
나게
causes
안
agony,
굶주렸고
but
안
they
덥지더라도
desire
말입니다.
that it is not too
그래서
hot and it
여러분들은 뭐
also doesn't cause them any headaches.
사실상 못 모르고
So
시집
although
잘
you
갔지만은
you
지금
got
마무리
married,
한다니까 좀 쉽지가
not
않죠,
knowing
그죠?
anything,
연세
but
드신
when you
분들
try to wind it up, it's not easy, right? But when you try
이게
to
뭐
wind it up, it
마무리를
is not an
하기가
easy
쉬운 문제가
thing.
아니죠. 보통 쉬운
So
뭐
you
네가
also
먼저
argue you
죽어라 내가
die
먼저
first or
죽어라
I
그러면서
die first,
시작하고
but also if they go
또
first,
그렇다고
then
가면
you also
먼저
feel bad
가면
about it.
또
You also have headaches.
서운하고
And
가슴
although you
아프고
tell them
또
to die
네가
sooner,
먼저
you
죽으라
also have
그래놓고서도
heart pain,
또 마음이
but you also
아프고
have
내가 먼저
headaches in
죽을까
case you
그래도 또
die sooner.
골치가 아프고
So until
그래서
you
이제는
die,
하여튼
you hope
늙어 죽을 때 어디
to
건강하게
live
그냥 우리
in
잘 건강하게
healthiness.
삽시다 응가가 그 소리 하는가? 나 무슨 사투리를 써놓고 나도 지금
You have to live in harmony.
잘 얼기설기 해가지고 살자 그러면 네. 근데 이제 뭐 참 자비심으로 하다 보면
Well,
이상합니다.
if you really have compassion, then you cannot even say that thing, because that actually
미안하지만은
means
하여튼 빨리
you should die
죽으라고 그
sooner.
소리는 그
But
소리도 못 하고
whether
그래도
you live
닮아생겨서
a
바르게
life
말든지 나보다는 오래
in
사시오.
difficulty,
그게 좋은 일입니까? 내가
maybe
대신
it's better if
빛을
you
가르쳐
live
줄 테니까
longer
빨리
than me.
죽으시오. 내 성할 때
But
죽으시면 그 빨리 죽으라는 소리
if you
아니야.
tell your husband that if he
그러니까
should
말하기가
die
그게
sooner
쉽지가
because
않다니까.
you will take care of him,
물렁개를 그냥
well,
결혼을
that
했다는
actually
기도를
means you
그때
want him to
그런
die
생각 안
sooner.
하고
So
했죠.
it's anyway
예?
difficult.
그런 생각 하고
It's
한 사람
very
소환합니다.
difficult to close it.
아무도 없어. 이 보통 골머리 아픈 게 아니야. 이 마무리 한다는 게 보통 골머리 아픈 게 아니고 또 그것도 뭐
And
혼자
also living
사는
alone,
것도 이게
where there is no
태어날
one
때는
who is
태어나고
born
싶어서 난 사람이
in
없다고.
order to
알고 보니까
be
태어나
born,
있었잖아요.
well,
그죠?
you realize that you are
알고
born
보니까 태어나 있었는데
after you are
이게
born.
또
So since you are born,
태어났으니까
you
어차피
also have to
죽긴
die.
죽어야 되는데 이게 보통 이게
And this is
마무리하기가
a
그렇게
very
쉬운
difficult thing
노래
to
문제가
wind it
아니야
up.
이게.
So
그래서 생사 대사라 그랬거든.
being born
나하고 죽는 것이 나는 것은
and
나고
also
나
dying
스스로
is
생각해보니까
a
죽는
matter
일이
of
보통
great importance. It is not
보통
something
일이
that's
아닌데
simple.
부처님은
But Buddha has
죽는 것을
started
마음대로
teaching
할 수
us
있는
how
법을
to
가르쳐 놨어요.
die
부처님 외에는
in
아무도
freedom.
없어요.
So other than Buddha, there is no
그러니까
one who
여러분
has
부처님 믿을만
spoken
해.
as told us the method. So
믿을만
Buddha
하죠.
is worth trusting.
우리가 이제
And
그
also, it
구약받은
is worth
사람들대로 한번
practicing the
수행해볼
way
만하죠.
that he asks us to do.
왜냐하면
Well,
그
if he
양반이
fooled
우리가
us,
속았으면 말이야.
then his
속였으면
disciples, well, his
그 제자들이
disciples are
보통
very
꼴통놈들이 제자
intelligent.
됐던 게 아니거든. 다 한 세상에서는 다 꼴통들이.
Someone
우리가
like
IQ가
Nagarjuna,
육수 같은
I think
사람들
if you
가보면
check his
요즘 IQ
IQ, it
조사해보면
should be more than
괜히
160,
60도
maybe
훨씬
close
되고
to
한 200 가까이
200.
됐을지도 몰라. 용수고사 같습니다.
Someone like
그렇게
them,
된 양반들이
they studied Buddha's
이제
teachings,
부처님
and
공부를
if
했는데
Buddha's
수준이 낮고
standard was
말이야.
low,
적은
and
소리
if
해놨다
he
그러면
spoke
용기가
in
있는
something
인간이 이상한
useless,
소리
then they would
해놨다고
have
막
said
들려주는 것
that
같습니다.
it is useless,
그
so they would ignore
해볼수록
it.
이게
But
이제
the more that
용수고사
they
같은
tried, the more
경우도
that they
그렇게 뛰어난
studied.
사람이
Even
공부를
Nagarjuna,
했어도
although he studied
부처님
so well,
옆에
and
가면
although he was such a
비석속에
great
가긴
person,
갔어도
where he
끄트머리까지
became
못
close to
갔거든.
Buddha, but he never attained,
그러니까 용수고사
he
같은
never
경우도
became the
부처님을
Buddha.
속아서
So even for
참
Nagarjuna,
대단한 걸 그렇게 할 수밖에 없잖아.
has to, Nagarjuna
할
also
수밖에
looks
없어.
up on him.
해볼만
So
해요.
it is worth trying. It is not
해볼만 해.
something that
쏙
fools
그런
you.
공부가 아니야.
It's
그러면
it's
이제
something that
이
you don't know
정도는
and I
하고
don't know.
그냥
But after
하여튼
that, you are
죽은 기계
redempted.
뭐 어디 구원받고 하는
It's not something like that.
그런 것은
So
아니라는 거지.
and also you're being redempted after that, but there's nothing proven about it. And so although I say it occasionally, if you believe that God exists there, well, it's actually a little better, so that you're not embarrassed at the time. If you say he's not there, but if you realize he's there at the time, then it's very embarrassing. So
그러니까 그래도 여러분도 뭐 하여튼
even you don't know which medicine is better. Well, I am 100% sure that the God doesn't exist. Although it's embarrassing, I'm sure. And I think Hopkins also was sure. So, where there's something in similarity between me and Hopkins. But for you, you don't know which medicine will be better. Oh, so maybe that's why don't say that God doesn't exist. Although it's embarrassing for me, it's fine with me.
그렇게 하시오.
Well, there's a question.
삼보에 기합니다. 스님.
Among 37 practices of Bodhisattva,
계속 있는데
there's a line, to close ones you have attachment, to enemy, anger and hatred burns like flame.
있게 하는 어두운 무명에 물들게 되는 고향을 떠나는
And so it is the practice of Bodhisattva to go on a hard and long journey. So the question is, what is here to take and what is there to throw away? So first thing in Buddhism that you have to get rid of is attachment. Because of attachment, the sense of hatred starts. And
신격고시도 지 아들이기 때문에 더 성질이 났을 거야. 그죠? 내가 낳아서 내가 키워서 요만할 때부터 키워서 다 반매이고 입있던 건데 전에 애비를 갖다 그냥 니 그만해라 그러니까 근데 그렇게 하기 전에 아들이 그렇게 하기 전에
well, even for Ku, yeah, I think it was bad because it was their child.
하려 그러니까 이게
So the king actually threw away
조금만 더 참았으면 좋았을 텐데.
away the king because he was alive until 94 years old. But well, it had been better if the son tolerated a little more, or if the father gave up a little earlier. So what do we have to get rid of? We have to get rid of attachment. Because of attachment, we become enemies. There's no reason for me to become an enemy with someone in Africa.
곱슬머리하고 내가 저기 될 리도 없고 빠마했다고 저걸 할 리도 없고 아프리카에 뭐 중국에
And also, there's no reason for me to become an enemy with someone living in far China, because we have a very far relation.
큰 적이 뭐냐면 무촌이라.
But husband and wife, with the relation, in terms of relation, well, you can just cut it off. But because of the attachment, you can become the greatest enemy. The second is that with your children, your daughter and your son, you cannot even talk to them. You can't even tell them what is it like. It's almost like in boxing. Well, if you're hit in the chin, then in your jaw, then you lose your consciousness. So you gain your consciousness afterwards when the winner is raising his hand, and you wonder what am I doing now? But there's a thing when you're hit in the body below your chest, you feel horrible. Normally the boxers, they hit them by the ribs. If you are hit there, then you cannot really breathe well, and your legs also lose the strength, and you fall to the floor. But your consciousness is just all right, just fine. But your leg and but your limbs, they stop moving. And
아들이
when your children does that to you, you feel exactly like that. Although you have a very clear consciousness, you don't know what to do because your limbs they lose all the strength. So when your children are doing that, especially when the son does that to the mother, then the sky seems yellow and you have no power in your legs, and you don't know what to do with your anger, and you cannot even tell anyone about it.
부모한테 말 한마디도 못해. 한마디도 못해. 그래서
So if the relation is formed based on the
아주
affection, then it's very good to become an enemy. So even children who are born to the parents, there are also a lot of them who are born to become their enemies. There are also some people who are born in the family in order to do the revenge. So those children, when they are born, they bring the whole house or family, and even when they do that, the family they cannot even say anything, and the parents they cannot even complain about it, and they just sink down.
그게 우리 이제 두 번째
So the second enemy is between the children and the parents, and the third one is between the siblings. So like Lotte cooperation between the parents, between the siblings, between so many of them. Next life they're going to be great enemies. Even if someone wins, it will be horrible. So in olden times, like the King Sejong, the person who was ruling the country together with his father and also his siblings, he killed everyone and he could not sleep because of the nightmare, and also he has some skin problems, and he wasn't even getting better, and because of that, and I believe even psychological problem was great, and he couldn't bear it, so he went to Sawonsa, and over there he prayed 100 days of repentance. The king left all the things about over the nation and went and prayed, but actually, some people say it was just in history, but you can actually see the proof of it when we open the history thing of Nagarjuna. So even now, there are only two sons, and he has about like 80 billions. Well, for 80 billions, he has a lot to share. And that's why you become enemies. To those close, you have attachment, and if those close and affectionate ones, if you become enemies, then you try to kill the other, and so all the time, if your greediness or anger is not controlled, if that's not controlled, then it causes you suffering and also agony and also many disturbances. And that itself, we call it very dark. And by getting rid of them, you're getting rid of them. And also those people who has become monk, you have to leave the lay world, the common world. You have to leave it. If you live inside of the common world or natural world, then you have to live in your greediness. That's why you have to get away from the greediness and your hometown. In countries like Japan, they also become the head monk and also gets married in the monasteries that were once taken or lived by their father. So it's not even like a monk or practice. So what is it that you have to take? You have to take the right teaching.
그래서 내가
So when I went for training to the monks who is just become monks, I tell them, oh well, you have just returned back home. They have come back home, right? So far, where you have been was not the real home. Now you have come back to real home, and since you are home, if you go out of the home once again, I'm going to report to police. You have left home, so don't leave this place. And so far, you have left home, and you've been to so many bad places and acted like many beggars, and you just felt that you are someone who is content, and you are also Buddha. And by throwing away the greediness of this world, you are the greatest person. But you yourself has gone through many different places and cheated and stole, drank, smoked, did many wrong things. So it's that you left home, but now you have come back home. You have actually come back to your hometown.
집으로 왔어. 이 집으로 이제 본가로 이제 온 거야.
You have come back to where you belong. You have come back to become your actual to get back to your actual appearance. So if you leave home once again, we should put you in prison. Where will you go again after you have already come back home? I've given the answer.
대답해 줬습니다. 예? 이게 인터넷으로 질문 넣은 거야. 질문한 거 대답했어요. 예, 이제 요
Now where are we?
어디죠? 침몰은 제 밑에 줄인가? 여러분 이제 요 지관법에 관해서
we are discussing in very detail about Samanthayam Vipassana. So if there is anything that's not clear, then please watch online once again. You can also watch it on your mobile phone. And this morning, I also received a call. I also received a call that the monks are also watching this. Well, if the monks are watching this, maybe I should speak about this in more detail. There are also contents about the 5 songs, and since the content is really great, maybe I should talk about it once again, because last time when I spoke about it, I didn't have so much time, and it seems like monks are also taking reference from it. And since you can also watch it online, was this Kime? The monk called me from Kime. And also I got a call from New York and South Africa, and also Ladakh. And also from India and Indonesia, Canada, America. It seems like this internet has more influence than the TV in terms of distance. So maybe they were also watching from the Orion constellation. If I get the signal, then maybe there's someone where there are also some people who say that they're having signal with the sky. Well,
통하잖아. 어깨 통하니까.
So
그
through online,
인터넷으로 이제
you
다
can watch it
같이
once again.
보는
So
것이
watch it
가능하니까
twice and
그런
three
식으로
times.
보고서
And
그
another
해주시고 그
thing,
다음에 하나
the samatha
요
practice,
사마타임은
not only
사마타임도
samatha but
그렇고
study,
공부를
you
하는
have
것은
to do
계속
previous study,
계속 복습
pre-study, and you
반복해야
also
돼.
have to repeat
그 초등학교
afterwards.
때부터 우리가 배웠잖아요.
Learned that from elementary
그
school. In
초등학교 때
elementary
제일
school, the
공부 안 하는
person
놈이 책가방 들고
who
책가방
doesn't
보면 책도
study,
안
they
넣고
don't even
딸랑딸랑
put
가가지고
textbooks in their bag
전에
and they
우리
just
학교 다닐 때
walk
그런 놈
around.
있었다니까.
Well,
왜
I
이렇게 앉았니?
also had someone
김한길이라고.
like
그
that in my in
말을
my
하면 혼자
elementary
듣고
school.
앉았으면 안 돼.
Was sitting next to me. In the bag, because
책가방에
the bag is heavy,
아무것도
there was
책도
no books at
무겁다고
all,
갖고 다니지도 않고 뭐냐면
but there was a
공책
notebook.
있잖아. 공책도 그거 그래서 옛날에 새똥종 이거 새똥종 있잖아요, 그죠? 그거 이렇게 잘라가지고 담배 말아 피우던 게 있잖아요. 풍년초 말아 피우던 거.
There was a
그거 이렇게
notebook
잘라가지고 갖다 꼬매가지고
only
그것만 들고
inside, and
와서
he would just write the
그
notes. And
필기만
when I
해가지고
asked, why
책도
don't
안
you
갖고
bring your
뭐
books?
책도
And
안 갖고
he
오냐?
answered, the
무거운 거
book
왜
is
갖고
heavy.
오냐?
Why would I
아니
bring
나는
it?
책을 봐야지 그러면
If I want
보고
to
싶으면
look
읽어보면
at
되지.
books, then
내가
I can
어디
also look at your books. And so his bag
그래가지고
was
책가방에 이제는
empty
딱 그거하고
except one
연필
notebook
하나밖에 안
and a
들었어.
pencil. If you do that,
그렇게
you
공부하는
cannot
거
really
근데 공부
study.
못해. 공부 못해.
And so if he goes home,
그러고 이제 집에 가면 이제 그 집에
you
가면
just
그
throw your
연필
bag
집어
and
간 거 갖다
the
공부할
bag is
거냐
still
하면
the same.
던져놓고 가요.
Sometimes I
책가방을
see the
열어보지도
same
않고
bag and he opens the
던져놓고
bag right in
던져놓으면
front of me.
그저께
He
책가방
hasn't even
장난은
opened the
그대로
bag.
해가지고 그대로 들고 와서 또 끓는다니까.
Even you all.
한 번도 열어보지도 않았어.
Do you know how embarrassed I was in front of Dalai Lama?
달라이라마한테 내가 얼마나 그 우리 한국 창피를 당한 줄 알아?
The sutra, the script, the Dalai Lama wrote,
청담 스님한테 옛날에
and
68년도에
when he gave it in
수익
1968,
장경 그 사선을 넘어서 가지고 온
when
정말
he actually
부끄러운
wrote the
장경을
sutra, the
습지를
script,
갖고 총이 뒤에서 날아오는데
the
장경을 짚고
scripture,
오신 거 아니에요?
when
그
there was a
장경이 없으면
gunshot,
원본 한 질이
and
없으면
it shouldn't be,
이게 한 질
it
갖고 와다
shouldn't
어디
catch
굴러버리고
fire on the
갖다
way
버리면
if they shoot
안 되니까 습지를 갖다
some.
앞에 한 팀에 한 질, 중간에 한
So
질, 저 앞에 뒤에 한 질 그래가지고
so even if
유실이
so he
되더라고.
stored it in
한
different
질이라도 남았어.
carts,
그
and
법을
he
갖다
brought it,
그 공부를 해야
and our
되니까.
Venerable Chongdan brought it
그걸
to
갖고
Korea,
그걸 하나
and he said, I don't need it, and he
청담
gave it
스님께서는 갖고
to
오셔가지고
the Dongguk
당신이
University.
뭐 나는 뭐
And in Dongguk University, they just kept it in the glass jar, just like a very Korean Buddhism, how we do. They have packed it,
우리도 경감은
and you can see the dust
경이라
there.
그래서 그런지 경건하게 모셔놨어. 딱 싸가지고 딱 먼지가 풀풀해. 원래
You should have read it. They don't even study it.
경건하게 위에 딱 모셔놓고 그좀
There's something that's for monks, not for us. And since the believers, they don't do it, even the monks, they don't do it.
스님들이라 하는 것이 우리는
And even us, after becoming monk, we say, we ask you to learn the 1000 Hand Sutra.
그래 우리도 출가했을 때
And they say, if you want to eat a food that's offered by others, you have to memorize it.
짭밥들이 먹으려면 외워야 돼.
And I thought you could just eat from the table. How can you ask us to do it if you don't teach us? And so a lot of people assume that you just have to mimic or try to recite it.
나 몰라 다 나다라 그래서 몰라도 되는 건가 보다 그랬어.
And so when I was introducing the head of the Dongguk University, well, if I say Korea's Dongguk University, then since they are not even aware that there is something like a Dongguk University there, and so I tried to explain to him, and I remember that there was a relation like this, and so I said it is a university that has the scripture that's given from you, or given by you. And later, when I took the picture and showed to him, well, you can see the cloth that covers the scripture, and he said, yes, it's mine. And do you know what is his next question?
맞아 이거 내가 한 보자기 맞다고. 그런데 그 다음 질문이 뭔지 알아요?
when I told him there is store very well in the school, he said, "Oh, and
학교에다 잘
huh?
모셔놨습니다.
You only have it there? You just have it stored?"
그러니까 그런데 그다음
And I told him,
선생님
"Yes, very well. It's even
모셔만 나왔어?
airtight."
모셔만 나와서 그래. 얘 아주 참막
And he
공기도 안 들어가게 잘
shook his
모셔.
head and said, "You have to study it."
그랬더니 봐야 돼.
And he said, "Translate it." And he gave us
그
and he
말씀에 딱 바로
donated
나오지. 번역해.
to $20,000 and start
20만
with
불
the translation.
마중물 돈을 갖다 바로 그 자리에서 내가 20만 불 줄 테니까 번역 시작하라고. 바로 그래 버렸다.
So even the scriptures or even the teachings,
경전도 부처님 말씀도 하여튼 계속 듣고 보고
sorry, it was
반복해서 그래야
$200,000.
이게
Well,
머릿속에
since you have so many wrong knowledge and also many different thoughts, and
그 잘못된 지식들도 많이 들어있고 이상한 것들도 많이 들어있고 이게
it's just like a room of 82-year-old grandfather who is living alone.
그냥 혼자 사는 할아버지
There is no grandmother, but there's only grandfather living alone. While here in Dolsan, I went to clean his room once, and the room
여기 돌산에
we set a tag and went in order to clean.
방이
We wrote even
우리가 방치우로 공격을 하고 들어갔어.
the cleaning and also
원소의 소독팀,
the flooring,
이제 그 청소를
and there were about
그다음에 뭐
disinfection team, and there were about like 30 teams there inside the small room. And we took him to a shower, and the room in the corner, because it smoked and he threw it there in the corner,
집을 그러니까 이
we could see the cigarette butt, which is 20 years old, because it's rotten there. And I think if we try to dig there, then maybe you could find some monument about 20 years back.
그 아마 발굴을 하면 20년 전
In our head,
유물이 나오게 생겼다.
just like that, we have so many useless things and worries and many different things. And also, we have misunderstandings about the teachings and superstitious ideas and wrong ideas, and also the theory of destiny, and so many things are mixed there. And it's just like a garbage bin. I don't know why I'm talking about this today, but however, in order to organize it, we have to throw away things which are not necessary. And also, if we ask you to get rid of them, the old people, they say, well, that has a use, and they put it back. And that's why the wrong ideas in your head, if we ask you to get rid of them, then when we do the teaching, they say, well, it's not good, but at home they do it again.
이 본문 들 때는 그가 안 좋긴 안 좋아. 그래 놓고서는 집에 가서는 또 그래.
So when you clean old people's houses, the old people, they shouldn't be there. You have to burn it so that they don't bring it back. And when we clean the mind of our heart, if we don't study the scriptures, we cannot do it. And also the practicing of samatha is not something that happens from the beginning. If you don't put into habit, it doesn't work out. You have to keep doing it. Where someone said, I tried it, but it was not working out. Well, it doesn't work out. Or something that was difficult even for Buddha. It's obvious that it doesn't work out easily. And that's why we are trying and we are putting our efforts to try to do it. People don't even try to do it, saying that it is not something possible. And so if you do it, well, my legs hurt if I sit down with crossed legs. Well, of course it hurts because you moved around a lot.
다리 꼬고 앉아 있으니까 다리가 아파서 아프지. 빨빨이고 다녔으니까 아프지.
Sometimes you can't do it because you're busy, and sometimes you can't do it because your legs hurt, and you give so many different excuses. And if you don't do it, then there's no way out. And so Buddha said, well, although I can bring the cow close to the river Ganga, it's on the cow to drink the water or not.
먹지 않는 것은
So the
소한테 달렸다 그랬어.
teaching of the method, well, I can teach and even Buddha can teach. But however,
그
if you don't
방법을
do it,
가르치는
then there's
것은
no way
내가
out.
얼마든지 가르칠 수 있고 부처님께서도
There's no
가르칠 수
way.
있지만은 그러나
To
본인이
someone who
안 하고
doesn't do it,
방법이
and
있긴 없지.
if he asks them to do,
전혀
then
방법.
they would also say it's burdening for them,
안 하는 놈한테는
and they
뭐
will not do
하라고
it. So
그러면 또
samatha,
다른기는 괜히 하라고 한다고 또 부담스럽다고 또 안 해버리고 말이야.
don't try to do it at once for hours. And even if you're doing it for 30 minutes in the beginning, you have to do it every day and try to extend it.
그 처음에 1시간 30분을 하더라도
And you have to keep doing it.
매일 하다가 조금 느리고 계속
And you have to repeat again and again, and that's very good. And even the study,
반복을 해서
well, you are about 30 years now.
매우 좋아요. 공부도 여러분이 지금 이제 일가보살님 30년 넘었잖아요. 그죠? 그죠?
Well, if you haven't studied for 30 years, you'll be in the fortune teller's house.
30년 동안 안 했으면 지금 점집에 다니지.
Isn't it so? Well, you might be going around saying that that's also the teaching.
그렇잖아요. 그죠?
And if you haven't learned or listened to the teaching for 30 years, you'd only talk about whether the bibimbap is delicious on the first day of the lunar calendar of each month. And you'd even talk about how good the sesame oil was.
한산사에 가니까 비빔밥
Well, that's why even the Buddhism is just like bibimbap bibimbap Buddhism.
그 불교가 그냥 비빔밥 불교라 그냥 초파이를 비빔밥 불교래.
You have also listened to teaching for about 30 years, right?
그것도 30년 됐지. 예?
You studied for 30 years.
30년 공부했어요.
Don't think that you're embarrassed that you studied 30 years, but instead think of what could have happened if you didn't study for 30 years.
안 했으면 예?
It would not have been good if you didn't study.
아, 파이다 그냥 안 된다. 막 그만 파인기라. 예?
So even sitting down, even studying samatha, you have to keep doing it so that you don't feel nauseous. You should not feel nauseous when at the sight of the cushion that you sit down, but you have to continue so that you don't feel sick of it. How many years have you studied? 23 years? You studied after you started coming to Sakcha Monastery.
그때는 머리가 저렇게는 안 됐는데 지금 예? 예?
Then and now it's still same.
못 올리지. 예?
Go and ask your husband if you think
남편한테 가서
she's pretty.
아니 수월이 지금 남편한테 가서
Your husband says that she's pretty because no, her husband says she's pretty just in order to get food.
살짝 몰래 한번 물어. 우리 이영자 보살님은
Even you study about 29 to 30 years, right? More than 30 years.
30 넘었지.
26 years?
청정심은 26년 됐나? 그러니까 요 수천사 와서 보기당에는 안 나왔잖아.
I don't think you came to the other school. Despite all that, because you still have the luck, and since you have continuously done so, at least you have not fallen to the wrong path.
같은 길로는 안 빠지고 그죠?
and
삿된 길로는 안 빠지고
instead you have been
꾸준하게
continuously
계속
doing so. What
미리
about
얼마나
you? When did
미리
you
1학년
start?
때였는가?
When your child was fifth
예?
grade?
5학년 때
Let's start with the book now.
우리 책 하자고.
Thinking is where, if the
시험으로는
state
마음의
of the
상태가
mind is not clear,
불분명하다. 경계
or if you have lost the
이렇게
boundary,
또는
or due
게으름으로
to
인식된다.
laziness.
그러니까
So if you have
그게
depression,
이제
or
뭐 우울증이야
if you
소리가
feel that
하고 나 그냥
do I have to
공부
study? Is
꼭
it
내가 공부해야
necessary?
되나?
Or I'm busy,
이런
I'll do it
생각하거나
later.
뭐 바빠서 내가 못 하겠는데 뭐 나중에 하지 뭐.
It
공부
refers to
생각이
the thought
절대로
of
해버리는
studying,
소리.
not processing forward. Instead, we call it sinking down.
그러면
The
침몰을
thought of
했다.
the study has gone
가라앉아
into the
버렸다.
water.
공부를 생각이 그냥 물 속으로 들어가 버렸다 그런 얘기야. 물 속으로 들어가 버렸다.
If that happens, that's also not
자꾸
okay.
이제 이렇게 되면 안 돼. 그러면 그
Then, at the state of the sinking
침몰돼 버리는
down,
상황이 이렇게 오면 말이야. 돼버리는 상황이 오면 가라앉아 버리는 상황이 오면 그게 다시 이렇게 그 떠오르는
the thought that you want to study again, it will not come to you naturally if you just leave it so. So when things are not working out well,
가라앉아서 잘 안 될 때는 안 될 때는
then you have to realize that your thought has sank down, and
내가 얼른
well, it's almost like if you fall down on the street, then you have to get up soon. Just like that, soon you have to feel that you have to study a little harder.
더 열심히 조금 해야지 하고 생각을 갖다 이렇게 해야 돼.
So if you lose the thought of studying, it comes to you from in many different aspects. If you feel sick occasionally, and if you feel sick after you get better, you don't want to do again. And some said,
또 누구는
when I was in Jungangdong, it was very easy for me to come, but it went to Yeocheon, and so now it's a little cumbersome for me to get the bus to come here.
그겁니다고.
But you cannot even win over a bus.
마구니도 하나 못 이겨가지고.
Because of those things, if you lose the opportunity to study, well, those kind of things that happens in our everyday life, there are also some things that will disappear very soon. But study,
들지만 공부는 요거는
just like the seed that has been
농부가 씨 뿌린 것처럼
sowed by the
수확을 할 수 있는 그
farmer, you can always harvest it. So you should not feel lazy about it, but you have to do it just like a farmer. You should not do it like a gambler. A gambler,
노름쟁이가 말이야.
when he's doing the gambling, he forgets, and
노름보다 그냥
well, occasionally there are also some people like that.
배 시꿈이 해놨는데 추락을
Although they have gotten the advance payment for the
술 먹고 술병 나가.
for selling out, there are some people who, although they have been paid already, they get drunk, they drink and get drunk, and they don't show up. That's loss for the owner of the ship and also the sailor.
그 사람도 손해잖아.
So if the farmer does not plant the seeds, and if he loses time to plant them, then
놓쳐버리면 그냥
it's almost like the lettuce for making kimchi. If you just do it a week later, then later the harvest also has a big difference. Those ones, if it's supposed to be this big, normally it is this small. Even a week's difference make a great difference. Just like that, if you study it that way, because I rested for a year, well, it is not so.
쉬었다고 뭐저안 그래.
So whatever the reason is, whatever the case is, you should not rest in studying. I'm telling you again and again, I'm also making a request to you. Studying, you should never rest, and
공부하는 것은 절대 안
the rest,
쉬어.
you rest.
나머지를 쉬어. 나머지를.
Studying, you keep it concrete, and the rest, you do slowly and occasionally. Things which are so difficult, for example, if you want to drink everything you want to drink, and if you want to meet everyone you wanted to meet, and if you say you have no time to study, then there is nothing more foolish than this. The rest, you can take a short rest. The conditions which doesn't allow you to study, it's better for you to take rest. If you come and tell me, in Yosu University, I'm learning how to read the mountains. Well, and I don't think I'll be able to come for a year. And I was very angry about it. You have to keep studying as the center of your attention. And you have to realize that because of those things, you should not neglect your study. Then only it will be beneficial to you. Someone who is going to learn about those things, it seems like you're not ready. You don't have to learn them. You don't have to learn how to read the trees and even the land. You just have to go and ask after that for someone to look for the grave for you. But instead, you can just go to cemetery. Because there are so many ghosts there. Well, I don't know if they would revolt all together. So you can either go to cemetery or some place where quite a lot of ghosts there. And the ghost can also discuss, why didn't your son discuss with someone to look for your grave? And they can also discuss between the ghost and my son did not even cry when I died. And so the ghost will not even harm you. I don't know if the ghosts will also have their own meetings. So whatever it is, study. You have to keep it as the center of everything, and then you can rest. If you try to rest, and if you keep everything else to the center and study as something on the side, then everything gets cut off. So you have to realize that those things are actually harming your practice or your study. That's how you're supposed to do. Even on our normal days, we say we are blank or we are unpleasant. If you are not clear about the object of your practice, and if you have the thinking, then the practice has no effect. So when you are reciting mantra or when you're doing some mantra practice, there are some times when you're reciting your mantra is going somewhere. There are two reasons. One's because you're blank, and the other one is because you're distracted. Sometimes you lose what you're doing because of your blankness. And because of that, in your samatha practice, if you're reciting Avalokitesvara, you have to the image or the mantra should always be there in your everyday life, in your daily life. But because we lack practice, well, at times we can also say when you're sitting down, we can actually do it. And sometimes you even remember kimchi or some other things. And even if you remember your son or kimchi, although you think of other things, you might think of them, but still, Well, she has
하다가도
two sons. One's
고려보살
Kunsu and the other one is Imsu. So although while doing that, while you are sitting, it's quite
그렇게
possible. It's
하다가도
quite your practice goes
앉아 있을
on.
때는
But when
된단
you're
말이야.
doing
근데
other things like walking
서서
or doing
걸어가거나
other your
일상
daily
다른 일을 할
chores,
때는
then you don't
기억이 안
remember
나고 다
Buddha,
하려고 그러면
and
없다는
even
거야.
Avalokitesvara has gone somewhere,
아재버섯도
and
어디
you're back
가버리고
to
부처님도 어디 가버리고 다 가버리면
yourself.
그냥
They are
내로
not
돌아와
there with
있어.
you.
없어.
Although they break off in your everyday life,
일상 하는데 강해지기는
what about
하더라도
you? Do you have
강해지면 일상 걸 때도 있나?
Oh,
없는
very
사람들.
good. Even when you are doing your everyday life, you
일상
have Avalokitesvara.
생각할 때도 간세무살이 있지.
Do you have to mumble?
그래 비 맞은 중처럼 중얼중얼 하면서 해야 돼? 예?
Well, monks who are standing in the rain, and when he's murmuring, well, other people might think he's crazy, but he's actually reciting. And if you do that, then although you think, if you do that, then you don't think of many other unpleasant things, like your husband should have eaten the food better. And those people, do you know how we know if the person is doing or not doing it? Except the time when they're eating.
밥 먹을 때
If someone is complaining about how the fish should be cooked, then you already know that the thought is
자기
because
아상에
things are not done in your way, and you already have the anger, and that only troubles the person.
괴로운 거야 사실.
But even in our daily life, if we recite Avalokitesvara, then so many different agonies that arises, they actually start withering off, and it actually you actually feel comfort.
굉장히 자꾸 편안해져.
You feel comfort.
자꾸 편안해진단 말이야. 알겠죠? 그래서 이제
So even if other people try to argue with you,
뭐라 그 시비하는 말을 갖다 누가
if you have the strength to do your practice, then you can say other people should not be angry at others too. And naturally, you see other person being angry if you're calm, and you tell the person not to do that, but and you do not tell them that the person you do not cause more anger, or you do not cause uncomfortableness over there, and by listening to that you also do not pick up a fight.
듣고서 전해가지고 시비를 붙이는 건 그렇게도 안 하고.
Again, you have to recite Avalokitesvara, or if you are thinking about where the words ended, or if you are meditating, well, your heart will have the strength to concentrate to one place, and most of the time the sinking down or distractions
산만하거나 이래서
which derives you from the concentration, they start to disappear.
소이처가 사라진단 말이야.
Likewise, you have to put your efforts to concentrate, and if you try to do your own practice, then the slumber and also the agitation and also the distraction, they start to go away.
사라진단 말이야.
If you do not take care of the object of your practice, then it can also cause a sinking.
이에 만일
If you have given up to confuse mind with sleepiness or slumber or sleepiness, and if you feel lethargic about it, if you have doubts about it, then you have to think about Buddha or bright light.
자꾸 이제
If you keep feeling sleepy, or if you have agitation, and if you become lethargic, and if you don't want to do it, then think about Buddha.
그렇게 하면 부처님을 가만 생각하면 그러니
You can close your eyes for a short period of time, or you can also open your eyes and concentrate for some time, and you can think of Buddha, that he has tried his best to gain enlightenment,
이루기 위해서 노력하셨고
and when he got enlightenment, there is no words which can express the delightfulness of it when he got enlightenment, and when the old agony our agony disappeared. So I would also like to be like him, and you have to keep encouraging yourself. But instead, if you feel unhappy about what kind of say you are, that's actually an agitation, and that is not something that we encourage you to do. And in this way, get rid of the sinking down and have a concentration of your mind at a point, and you need to be able to see the object of your mind very clearly. So here it is the concentration point of your mind, and if you are doing it to Avalokitesvara, then it also has to be clear. Well, people keep asking this kind of questions. Even yesterday, I got a call from 3 places.
어저께도 세 군데서 전화가 와서 받았는데
Where you reside Konsenposa, where do I have to concentrate?
뭐에 집중을 해야 됩니까? 그러더라고요.
While reciting Avalokitesvara, do I have to try to image Avalokitesvara, or where do I have to concentrate that? That was the question. But you just imagine the shape in the beginning, but while you are reciting it, do not have concentration on the statue or the imagery. Here, awakeness is something that when I'm doing Avalokitesvara, if I concentrate on the statue, then the mind goes to two different ways on the imagery concentration and the recitation. So when you're actually doing the observation meditation, you should not recite and you should not also have the imagery. So when you're having the imagery, you should not recite verbally, and so do not try to have the mind in two different sections. You understand after doing it, but because of our habits, even when you are doing Avalokitesvara, we think that we have to look at something. But if I am sleepy, or if I am sinking down, and if I feel lethargic and don't want to do it, or if I feel distracted, then in order to make the heart not to go to somewhere else, you recite Kansenbosar verbally, and you can hear it. You can hear yourself reciting it. By hearing myself reciting, then the mind also gets settled on Kansenbosar. You should not just keep concentrating on the sound. Just leave the sound as it is being heard. Just leave it, and you don't feel sleepy, and you don't feel distracted, and you are reciting Kansenbosar, and your mind just flows together with it. And just like you are making a rosary, it can just keep accumulating. And so keep your mind on the concentration point. And so as the end of the speech, with the speech ahead, even the concentration on the breath, on inhale and exhaling, you concentrate your mind to that point. Did you come to the teaching last week? You couldn't come. She didn't come last week. So listen carefully to what I say. Well, you can have the Tanga in front of you, but in the beginning, it's also okay if you don't have it, but by having it in front of you, well, it's a mandala, or you make
모시는 것은 만다라란 말이야.
and Buddha
그럼 이제
becomes a light. You should
부처님께서
not say Buddha
이렇게
came in a
이
figure.
시대에서 그
Buddha
형상이
became a
돼서 왔다고
light
하면 안
and
돼.
arrived here.
빛처럼
If
이
you
시대에서 이게
imagine
무슨
something like he
와 이렇게
came
와서
in person,
형상돼서 왔다 그러면
then
나중에
you start believing
유명인처럼 된다고.
superstition. So you should not think
깊어지면
so. You have
안
to
돼.
think that he became a light
빛이에서
and
오셨다가
came
나중에
and
빛이에서
also
가셨다고
left as a
이렇게
light.
돼져야 돼. 그래서
So
빛이
just
저에게
have a
오셨고
brief
하고
imagination
잠깐
in front of you
관상만 잠깐 하라 그
and then
말이야.
offer
그래서
and
공양을
have
올리고
your prayer.
주력하는
So
것은 그러니까 앞에 타가를
I'm
모셔놓으면서
not
뒤에서
asking you to have
모셔놓으라는
the
거야.
tanga
그걸
in
가만히 보고
order
있으라는 뜻이
to
아니란 말이야.
do something,
집중하는 것은
but your
그
concentration should
관세음보살
be on
외모에 집중을
Dharani
하라 그
or
말이야.
at some
다란이에
point.
집중을 하든지 집중하는 것은 거기에
Do you
집중을 해야 돼.
understand?
이해돼요? 그렇게
And
하란
you
말이야.
need to gain strength
그렇게
while
거기에
doing
이제
it,
하나님의
whether you're
힘이
doing it
붙어야 돼.
Amitabha or
관세음보살한테
Jijangposal or
힘이 붙어야 돼.
Munsuposal.
아미타불
You
하든지 뭐
need to gain
지장보살
strength to
하든지
it, and you need
문수보살
to have
하든지 거기에
one
힘이 쭉
aspiration,
붙어서
and you need to
이면역에서
accumulate
자꾸
it.
나가게끔
And
만들어놔.
the effects of it, that
그러면 이제 그 효과가
distractions,
어떤 것이 생기냐면
sleepiness,
자꾸
or agitation,
의심되거나
they start
도구하고
decreasing.
산만심이 일어나는 그거 자체가 자꾸 줄어든다 그 말이야.
And that them reducing
그게
is the
줄어드는 게
actual
효과야.
effect. While reducing, just
그게
like a
줄어들다가
shadow, they
나중에
start to
그게
disappear. There will come a
진짜
time, even
그림자처럼
the
사라질 때가
slumber
온단
or
말이야.
agitation or
의심도 그림자처럼
distraction,
사라지고
just like a
도구 의심도
shadow,
사라지고
because
산만심도
they never exist
그림자처럼 그게 원래
in
없이 우리가
reality,
계속 이렇게
but because we
떨어뜨리니까
gave them
우리가
conditions
그런
and
일으키는
also
원인과
cause for
속도를
them to
우리가 계속
exist, we
만들어서 우리
made
스스로
ourselves
괴롭게 만드는
suffer.
거니까. 그러니까
So controlling the mind, there is
그
no other thing
마음을
other
그렇게
than
잡는
Buddhism.
법이라는 것은
With the
불교에
concentration,
대한 것처럼
cleaning the
그렇게 집중시켜서
mind
마음에
itself or the
마음
heart
안을
itself,
갖다
or
깊이
actually
청소한다는 것은
making the proper perception.
사실 우리가
Well,
바로
although we
계획을
have made the
세우는
proper
것은
perception, we have not been
계획을
able
세워
to do
있지만은
so.
그렇게 되지는
We
않았다는
know
거죠.
that I need to do good things, and although I started
내가
doing good
성행을
things,
해야 되겠다.
it's
성행이
not on
없구나 하고
my
했다고
habit to do the
하더라도
good
내
things.
습관이 있어서
And
성행이
even
안
the
되잖아요.
distraction, I know that
내가
not having
산만한
the
마음을
distraction
안
is good,
일으켜야
but
그게
we still
옳다라고
get distracted
생각하지만은
about
그
many
산만한
things.
마음이 안 일어나질 않잖아 이거죠.
But even if we have the
그런데
right perception,
바른
doesn't mean the
계획을
agony has
세웠다고
disappeared.
하더라도 그건 내가
So making the
떨어지지
agony
않았단 말이야.
disappear
그건 내가
is
떨어지지
actually the
않는다는 것은
experimenters practice. Is actually
빛의
the practice of
육바람이
those experimenters.
바람이다의 수행이라고 행법이라고 그 행법이란 말이야.
So without doing this, without studying like this, although I emphasize so many times,
하지 않고서는 내가
trusting
수없이
Buddha's
강조를 하지만은
teachings, it doesn't have so much value. It doesn't benefit you at all.
없어. 여러분에게 아무런 이익이 안 돼.
So that's why I'm asking you to, or requesting you to do your practice again and again.
계속 요청하는 거야.
You understand?
알겠죠? 그다음에 이렇게 해서 침몰을 제거한다고.
In this way, you have to get rid of the slumber, and you have to make sure that you can see the object of your meditation very clearly. So we do this in the meditation of observation. So the observation or the content or the object of your meditation, it should not disappear, but it should be very clear. But if you are reciting for a long time, then the mantra disappears, and even in the mind, the object of your concentration disappears, and you just feel silent and comfortable. And that is actually the slumber, the state of slumber. That should continue. The point of my concentration, the 관세음보살, it should be clear. And even if you are meditating in imaginary observation, it's important if it exists, if it lasts for a long time. if it continues to exist, then either that there is no slumber or there is no sense of distraction. And if it continues, then as I told you in the beginning, even if you are old, it's difficult to wind it up. Well, that thing does not become difficult anymore, even at the point of dying or even at the point of death. Most of the time, when you're about to die, a lot of people get distracted or are in a very difficult state, and they don't have a proper mentality, and they lose their own mentality, or because of fear they just cover with fear. I've seen a lot of people who passed away, so I know that. But if you have the samatha, if you are at certain stage of samatha, even at those times, it's very clear. Even at those times, there's no fear or anything like that. Even the thing called fear, because of my attachment, it started to come off. But that's why I accepted that as written in the Paramita Sutra, the fear does not exist. When I saw Dalai Lama on 21st January, he said, "I'm quite good at teaching Paramita Sutra. If I go to Korea and teach them, I think since I'm quite good at it, it will be quite beneficial. Where even Venerable Jinok is quite good at it." Slumber and sinking down, they act as cause and consequence for each other. So whether it is slumber or the lethargicness of you, or becoming lethargic, or if you're feeling a little sleepy, well, actually two of them, they act together, and they produce more effectiveness on their own. If you're sleepy, you don't want to study, and if you don't want to study, you feel sleepy. And so you have to keep encouraging it. Without doing that, there's no one who is good at study from the beginning. There's no one. On TV, someone who got the score in the final test of class 12, he said that, well, he just studied. He listened well to the teachers and slept at the right time and studied when he had to. And that saying made everyone else foolish. If your consciousness becomes unclear, then your mind and your body becomes heavy. So if you have a lot of slumber, even people, when you see, there are some people which you know that the person will not be able to study well, and they are those who have a lot of slumber, and so even if someone tells them something, their eyes are all blank. Because they are not very clear. If the practitioner loses his sharpness, then the mind becomes unproductive without any effect. Especially when you're doing Hwadu or Samatha practice, if your mind is not clear, and if your mind is not very if your mind is not sharp, then you become foolish again and again. So it's not possible only with the heart. And even if you're not about to have the proper mind, thinking is just one of the state that is one of the state of your spirit mindness, and therefore you have to awaken your mind and also need to know how to encourage. And one of the effective methods you can either think of the source of your happiness like Buddha who has everything, or you need to be grateful about having the body, or it's good to have the great it's good to feel grateful about getting this opportunity. And we know the story about Napoleon, that when he was crossing the Mount Alps, he encouraged every other soldiers. So when you think of Buddha, you can think how good or how great will it be if I become like Buddha. Amongst one of the amongst so many virtues of Buddha, how great will I be if I am able to achieve even one of them? So when your heart keeps sinking down, and it also helps your heart from giving up.
일본말로 하도메 채운다 그러잖아요, 그죠? 그래요? 하도메 채운다고?
Uh, some
뒤에 차가 뒷바퀴 안 오게끔
uh,
뒤에
when the car is about to fall off to sleep,
세게
then we also put something in order to make sure that it doesn't fall off or fall backwards. Because if you have the slumber, or if you have those kind of distractions, then it's bound that you will have difficulties and not be able to proceed forward. And if you think about it,
그리고 생각해 보면 공부할 수 있게끔 이렇게 이제 그
as a human,
인간이 이를테면 동물이나 이런 것들은
well, animals, they are not aware that we have something like DNA, but as a human being, we came to know, and we also know how they are being passed down.
전달되는지를 다 알았다고. 근데
And we only know it because we are born as a human.
때문에 그걸 알 수 있는 것이지. 인간으로 태어났기 때문에. 그러니까 인간의 사난덕, 또 8가지 육아라 그러지, 8육아라 그러지. 그래서 인간으로 태어날 수 있는
So it's very difficult to be born as a human. We call it four virtues, and
그러니까 내가 지금 이 생에
so you also need to be grateful, and it's a precious opportunity that you're born as a human. And also you need to be very grateful about the conditions that you are born, that you are able to study, and also that you met the Buddhist teachings. And by meeting Buddhist teaching, you are also proceeding one step and another step ahead. And if you understand it, that if this is a great opportunity, then there's no need for you to go backwards. If you think of it just like the gold bar that you have put in the in your closet, then there's no need for you to forget about the gold bar in your closet. When I tell you about this, do you tell your husbands?
얘기해주나?
You don't?
안 해줘? 그것도 뭐 듣고 가서
You can ask your husband to sit here. Well, I heard from Venerable Jinok that why don't you open your book?
그래가지고 87페이지 펴고 요거는 요런 거라요.
Open 87 page and this or this. You can tell him.
안 해?
You don't? Well, I think you should. Does your husband listen?
얘기하면 좋은 말씀
Good sayings, he listens.
안 되고 응? 돕수 아빠는 좀 들어? 응? 한마디 하면 지가 더 많이 얘기해버려?
If you says one thing, then he replies back with 10 other things.
그 말도 맞네. 그 습이 짙어서 내요.
He's
그래서
angry
가끔
because
시험을 한번
of
해주시오.
his habit. So
가끔 시험을
occasionally you should
내가
ask him
어디까지
to do
저
some
인내심이
experiments
가능한지
until
그 시험을
which
당신이
point
좀
you are able
해주시오.
to tolerate it. Ask him to do this experiment.
이렇게 수행의 의미와 결과를 생각함으로써 마음을 고치시켜서
In this way, by
그러니까
thinking about the meaning and
마음이
also the consequence of your
주저앉았던 이 가라앉아
practice,
버렸던 것을
you
조금
can also
부양시켜줄
encourage your
필요가
heart.
있다.
So there's a need to
그래서 내가
the there's need
이런
to
생각도 한번
raise the
해보라고.
mind that has sink
내가
down or
호기심을
sunk
발휘해서
down. Well,
중생을
think
위해서
of
내가
this
일체 중생을 위해서
by
내가
having the sense of bodhisattva for all
살겠다라고
sentient
해라고.
beings. I'm going to live my
그게
life.
사실
After
이
saying this,
공부하는 것의 첫 선언이거든.
well, that's one of the very first
공부는
statement that you have
수행자는
to do
출가는 제가든지
as
각기
a
그냥
while
여러분이
you do
아
your
이거 진옥생
practice.
얘기하는 게 재밌어서 와서 듣는다 이런 얘기가 아니란 말이야 이거는. 이거
It's not that
뭐냐면
you just
전부 다
come
내가
here and
이제는
listen
일체
because what
중생을
I say is interesting,
위해서 내가
but
살겠습니다. 요거
for
선언이란
good
말이야.
of all sentient beings, you are
그래
going to
놓고서
live your
아 이제
life.
나는 이제
This is a sort of
못하겠다 그랬다고.
declaration. And after
그럼
saying
이제 우리
so, if you say, oh,
대승보살배를
well,
받을
you're
때
not able to do
보살배를
it,
받을 때
then when you actually
보리심을
receive the
내놓고
precept
보리심을
for the
흡대해버리면
bodhisattva,
중재가 된다.
we say if you leave the
그럼
bodhisattva
뭐가
and
나쁘냐고.
if you
우리
also
집에 잔치
depart from
있으니까
bodhisattva, then
점심
it's
먹지
a
말고
great
오시오
crime.
그래놓고 점심
That's
때가 다
almost
됐는데
like I
집에
have a party at
가니까
home,
아이고 잔치 안 할라요 가시오.
and
굉장히
so you
민망하겠지.
call everyone, but everyone tells that you tell everyone after they are arrived that I'm not going to have
그리고
party, so
이제
you should just go home.
정말
Well, that's very
다음에는 그
embarrassing.
사람이 초청을 한다 그래도 다시는 안 와버리지.
Then next time, even if the person invites anyone, no one will come because there is no creditability.
또 이제 내가 여러분을 초청합니다. 그래놓고 다 해놔놓고 음식을
And
갖다가
also, if you say I'm inviting everyone, and the food, if you give them rotten food,
먹고 배탈나거나 그러겠지.
then everyone who's there could have stomach problem.
다 불법을 갖다가 배우러 온 사람들, 수행으로 온 사람들, 내 가족들, 친지들.
So everyone who has come there, all the friends and all the family members who has come to listen to the teaching, but for them, if you don't listen to proper teaching, but if you invite them to the wrong thing, then everyone will fall into hell. So
아버지 한 사람이 바로 되는 것이든지
whether it is one right mother or one right father, you need to stand at the right spot and teach them the right thing, and that way you're dragging everyone to the right path. So you yourself doing the wrong thing is not only for yourself, but you are actually dragging everyone to hell together with you. This is something very dangerous. And it is also a very scary thing. So someone who is sitting here and teaching Buddhism, well, I'm saying it all out in the front, in order to gather people saying wrong things and also claiming wrong things. It's almost like you bring the blind people and fall into hell. Isn't that so? There's something very funny. There was also a newspaper on Hangul newspaper. I hope they don't just publish anything on newspaper. Prayer for the test, and well, I'm going to imitate. The grandmother brought a big rosary, and she dragged it and
내 하나가 삿되지만 나와 인연 있는 모든 사람을 끌고서 가도 이게
If you follow the wrong path, then you are dragging everyone who has relationship with you to the wrong way. Well, I just realized that there are two cameras here.
이게 그물 있잖아, 그물 그죠? 그물이
You know, net.
그물이 이렇게 있으면
When there is a net,
만약에 어디에 밑에 바다에 그 그물 끌다가 요게 탁 밑에 뭐가 걸려 버렸어.
while dragging the net, if it hits something or got stuck something, then can other nets come up? All of them cannot come up.
탁한 꼴을 잡고 탁 당겨 버리면 다른 그물들을
And by holding onto one side of this net, then all other nets also follow. Likewise, we are all connected.
한 사람이 잘못하면
So if one person does wrong, especially a person who is following religion or working in the religion, look at Dalai Lama. He doesn't say anything about for him personally for his any benefit. I have listened to his teachings over these years, but he never talked about anything for him. But he only talks about things good for others, and he also doesn't talk about himself. Of course, he can talk about many other things, but he doesn't. He also has his own index of other great teachers' speeches, and in that way, it also has more credit. But in our country, we say if the person is a great teacher, then they say, I studied so many years in this mountain or that mountain. I studied in a cave and this happened and I starved for many days and over here I met someone and that's all they talk about. You shouldn't do so. That's not the way. Why the Dharma seat, as is also spoken in Lamnim, you should not talk about anything other than teaching. And the person who teaches or who is a messenger of this Buddhist teaching, that person also need to know what they're talking about and what should be spoken at the right point of time. That's one of the most important aspects. Do you have some meeting? Or maybe I should also have those one of those meetings that you guys have. And while doing the teaching, I will say, why don't you stay here for longer? I'm going to go for my meeting. Did we pass it? Together with the development of samatha, you can overcome other obstacles of spiritual agitation, such as something like those. So by having the concentration, and if you continue, then the samatha gets developed over time. And the others, they start deteriorating. If mind follows the happiness of past or the object of its desire, then you'll have agitation. So while sitting here, if you think that you're very happy when your first child was born, then your concentration is again lost. If you also think that the clothes that your mother made for you was so pretty, then you also forget. Well, whether it's good or bad things, there's no need to think about it. Those things which happen in past, they have actually they are actually gone. So there's no need to talk about it or think about it. If you think that the land that you bought about 10 years ago that is very developed, if you haven't sold it, if you think of those things, well, there's no need to think about it. And if you sit and think, then you have so many different thoughts too. And do you know what is funny about it? When you have those wrong thoughts, then you think that wrong thoughts, you realize that they are actually agony. So you try to cut it. But when you think of good things, you just realize that they are the good ones. Especially your children. You think that, oh yes, I was very happy when I had them. And for about 10 minutes, you are just lost in your thought. And I have named it. And that's almost like the obstacle of money or children, or there are a lot of them. The agitation, which in the harsh form, then it becomes the cause of forgetting or losing the concentration point completely, where it provides you the reason for you to forget the object or the whole thing about the concentration. So you know those very minor things, very detailed things. Even the mantra, there is a point of time when it happens or it doesn't happen, and there are times where it stops occasionally.
진옥 스님이 염주기 해달라 그랬는데 간세음보살 그러면
While reciting, if you think of something else, then then each different thought that you have, it breaks off. If you think of so many different things.
자꾸 이제 그런 것이 미세하게 가면 완전히 끊어져 버리는 간세음보살이 끊어지지는 않는데 잠깐 끊어져 버려.
If you think of them again and again, then although they don't break off completely, but they do break off slowly. Yesterday, I should have bought my kid what my kid wanted yesterday. Maybe I should buy it today. But the big ones, yesterday my husband spent so much money and I'm very angry about it. And even if you want to reset the game to 관세음보살, you're so angry, so your voice raises. And you also curse your husband. So it just breaks off in a segment. So the harsh ones, they make different segments and pass away, and those small and minute ones, they also make small segments, and also they walk away. When they happen, whether it is minute or detailed or the big ones, they cause all obstacles on their own, so they have to go by very soon. And you also need to go back to your original state.
이 문제를 해결하기 위해서는 그 들뜨게 하는 생각들에게
In order to
무상이나
solve this
적용해야
problem, you have to implement the suffering or voidness to those rising thoughts. Then those minds starts to
올라왔다가 올라왔는데
calm down slowly. Well, by doing so, if you're very angry about your husband,
생각을 갖다
even when you're very angry, think of it once. Yes,
찾아올 수도
it's a money that he spent already. It's not something that can get it back. It's void. If you think so, well, if you're not able to let that go, don't keep it as a big lump inside your mind, but just think that it is something void and doesn't last forever. Have this kind of observation. Well, it's fortunate that my husband spent only $1,000. There are also some people who even sell their house. Well, we should just let them go at this point. What can we do?
오늘 여기까지 할까요?
Shall we want to hear today?